Why is there no draft in the NRL? It's such an important plank of the AFL ecosystem.
AFL's lucky to have it.
Why are there so many scandals in the NRL?
Well, the AFL's had plenty. It is absolutely bizarre, and it's the number one thing that rugby league has to fix.
How do you fix?
It's unacceptable. Welcome to episode 2 of Cracking the Codes. Neil Breen from Channel 9 in Sydney here, and my colleague Tom Morris from Channel 9 in Melbourne. We're discussing all things AFL and rugby league, the battle between the two codes for supremacy across Australia. Who's winning, who's losing. We don't want to get into a brawl, but we'll probably have a lot of brawls when I say that. Is that right, Tom?
It's so interesting the way you phrase that, Breeny. Who's winning, who's losing. Isn't it pretty clear cut that the AFL is well ahead of rugby league? Just given the numbers.
I think if you were in Melbourne, given the numbers, but maybe not so much TV numbers.
Really?
Yeah, rugby league's been absolute powerhouse.
Yeah.
An absolute powerhouse when it comes to television ratings, and it gets those. I don't ever look at it and go, oh, the biggest rating TV show of the year was the NRL Grand Final with 2.2 million viewers. That's rubbish.
Ahead of maths.
Yeah, but that doesn't take into account the 78 blokes in the public bar of the Stone Ridge Hotel in whatever. You know what I mean? Like I think the numbers are far greater. But I think across the board, rugby league is very competitive with AFL. Crowd attendance, not so much. Membership, something we'll get into, and broadcast rights, the AFL. Rugby league always comes up with some set of figures that shows it makes more money from broadcast rights than AFL.
Really?
But then I see the broadcast money, I go, I think AFL's got more money.
Yeah,
but
right.
Anyway, I thought the way we should get into this second episode, Tom, after we sort of felt our way through the first one, I want us to ask each other's questions.
Yeah,
right?
Okay. I'm interested in understanding more about your sport.
Okay.
Given that I'm, as I said, an ambivalent NRL fan.
Yeah, and I'm not an ambivalent AFL fan, but it's not my number one game.
No.
Is
it your number 2? Is it ahead of rugby union for you?
No, I'd still have rugby, and then I'd have AFL, then I'd have football.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But somehow I end up watching all of one and bits and pieces of the other 3. I want to know this, and it's something that has not been cultural in rugby league, and rugby league is playing catch-up massive.
Yep.
Right? The figures from last year that AFL clubs had 1.319 million members. So 1,319,000 members, 73,000 members on average per club. The NRL, which never even had memberships 15 years ago.
What do you mean?
It's just not something. You might be a season ticket holder, but you weren't a member.
Right.
And so it has 26,000 average per club, but it's been a driver. What is an AFL club membership? What is it?
Well, it's deeply cultural. I'm surprised. I actually didn't know that it wasn't a thing in NRL.
It just wasn't a thing.
Because you can become a member of an A-League club. Like, it's cross code. Like, I used to be a member of Melbourne Victory.
But I was a member of East Rugby Union when I was a kid because I played there. Mum and Dad were a member of the club. But I don't know.
So what do you get?
You just went...
Is that what you're asking? What do you get?
Yeah, what do you get for...
Well, you get a lanyard and you get a scarf, and some clubs you get, it depends what level of membership you have, but you might get a reserve seat or automatic access to a grand final if your team makes it.
So there's different levels?
Different levels, from a 3-game membership to a platinum membership, which gets you a reserve seat on grand final day, depending on what you want to pay.
So it's platinum membership, I'd be getting the scarf and the lanyard and all the garbage.
Getting everything. And
but
probably
I would be going to every game.
Yep.
And then if my team makes the grand final, I get priority queue.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And then there's low level ones where
really low level, which will cost you $60, where you might get one for your kid, for your 2-year-old son or 2-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And you'd get a little scarf and a signed calendar and maybe access to 2 Sunday games during the year. So a membership, and this is one thing that's actually been debated.
It'd be a general admission, a GA.
Yeah, GA. Yeah, but you get access and. This is one of the things that's been debated in the AFL, because every year they break the membership record. But every year, the membership threshold goes a long way down to the point where you can actually just get it almost for $15 at the end of the year. So what it is to be a member has changed over the years. When I was growing up, a member was you are a rusted-on supporter, you're going to most home games, and it costs you, I don't know, $100 or whatever the equivalent was then.
Yeah.
Now you can be a member. There's memberships that come out in round 15, buy a 3-game membership for $40 and get access to the last 3 home games of the season.
Oh, right.
And then that counts under the membership tally. So it has changed a bit over the years.
Yeah, so I've never really got my head around it, and they're doing it in rugby league, and I think I think it's a good concession from the sport of rugby league that it's something the AFL does way better.
I'm surprised you don't do it in rugby league.
We do it now. We didn't.
Yeah,
we didn't. You know, you might have been known as a season ticket holder to the Broncos or something like that, but not so much a member.
Well, it's a badge of honour for a club like Richmond or Collingwood, which has 100,000 members. When they reach 100,000, they flood the airwaves. Look at us. Look how good we are. Look, the Magpie Army or the Tiger Army.
Right.
Whereas smaller clubs like the Giants and the Gold Coast Suns don't have that level of membership.
Okay.
You can also be an AFL member, by the way, as well, where you get tickets to go and watch games, but you don't necessarily get tickets for particular teams to watch. So being an AFL member is a different thing to being a club member. Most people are club members. Being an AFL member is a different kettle of fish altogether.
Okay.
I've got a question for you.
Yes.
Why is there no draft in the NRL? It's such an important plank of the AFL ecosystem.
Well, in the league states, we watch the AFL draft from afar and think you've all lost your minds.
That's probably fair.
It goes.
Why is that? Why
it
though?
never ends.
It goes
Your
for 2 nights.
Your noggin pops up. Yeah, but there were the horse trading before it and everything.
Yeah.
And then there's different levels of drafts. I'll explain it to you.
Okay.
AFL's lucky to have it. Because it's such a great publicity thing and it's a lot more certainty and it narrows it all down. Okay, so in the 1990s, when the game was changing, it became, it wasn't just the New South Wales Rugby League anymore. They expanded and brought Brisbane and the Newcastle Knights in 1988. Previously in 82, they'd brought in Canberra and Illawarra. So the old New South Wales Rugby League, which was your old VFL, where there were the inner city Melbourne clubs and Footscray and that battling it out for a premiership. Sydney was the same. Brought those extra clubs in. So there were teething problems. And through the 90s, they were trying to innovate. All this was a precursor to the Super League war. But they brought in a draft. They said, we'll do a draft.
For 18-year-olds.
Yeah, and we'll do it for anyone. Like
Okay,
maybe
anyone.
you're at this club and you want to go to that club, or someone wants to draft. We'll have a draft, and players who are going to off contract at Manly, they go into the draft, and because Manly don't re-sign them, and then that way Brisbane can sit there and say, we'll give you this player and we'll take that player, whatever. Just the way a normal draft works, right? And even 18-year-olds. Then what happened was there was a famous rugby league player played for the Kangaroos by the name of Terry Hill. Terry Hill didn't want to go into the draft. He wanted to go and play at Manly, right? I'm going to go play for Bozo Fulton at Manly, right? So he went to the federal court and challenged it under a restraint of trade,
Right.
as a sole trader. He said, I'm a sole trader, and you can't tell me as a sole trader that I have to go there.
And did he win?
And he won.
And he won.
Easy. He won easy. So it killed the draft.
Terry Hill will play for the club of his choice next year.
We didn't need to go to court to determine it was a restraint of trade. We told everyone that. We told the players that. That's the disappointing part about it, and I think that's disappointing for sport, that again we're not able to determine our own destiny.
Now, one of the reasons people say, well, we've got to bring it back. Just get the players to all understand that it has to happen. The reason they can't bring it back is because unlike AFL, so the AFL draft survives through, the AFL Players Association and the AFL and everyone agreeing to play ball.
It's just understood.
It's understood
It's
you've
what
got
you
to
do.
do it. And if one of those players wants to go to the federal court and take it on, they'll win. But the reason that they stick together is there's no natural competitor.
Yeah.
Rugby, NRL has a competitor. Rugby can
Right.
take players and sign them. Japanese rugby, plenty of money.
You can go
French
overseas.
rugby, plenty of money. European rugby, the English Super League.
Interesting.
So there are competitors. So rugby league's got to be wary of those competitors, understand the wishes of the players, and that's why there's no draft.
It's fascinating. So the reason that there's no draft is the reason there is a draft in the AFL is because, well, what else are you going to do? What, you're going to go to the federal court? Are you going to play in Japan or England? There's no AFL in those countries.
You got no, because you can go play Gaelic football, but it's amateur.
The draft is a key plank of the pathway system in the AFL.
Yeah, it's not in league.
It's
It doesn't
designed to prop up the lesser clubs and top up the good clubs. And all you want to do when you're a kid is get drafted. It's an important part of the system. And that, your explanation makes perfect sense, but
Yeah.
the draft's not going anywhere in the AFL. Although it has
It's not
changed
happening
over
in
the years.
league.
It has changed over the years.
It's not happening
No.
in league.
All because of one bloke. Was he a good player, this fella?
Yeah, he played for Australia.
Yeah,
Cherry
okay.
Hill.
Was it all worth it, I
He
wonder, for
spoke
him?
like this. Cherry Hill, and he was a big Footy Show star.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he used to do. They used to cross to him at the Greyhounds every Thursday night on the Footy Show.
What a night. The atmosphere is electric. A smell of amplification.
So the NRL, actually on that, the NRL Footy Show, I used to watch growing up.
Yeah.
So the AFL Footy Show would be on, and then the NRL Footy Show would
Coming
be
up.
after. And for a long time, I actually enjoyed the NRL Footy Show probably more than the AFL.
Yeah.
Because they didn't even talk about the rugby
No,
league.
no, lunatics.
They just did everything else. It was like a variety show. Anyway, that's another topic altogether.
I want to know, is AFL big in every school? Like, is that what school kids play?
In what state?
Well,
I don't know here as much. I don't know.
no. I'm talking in Melbourne. I'm not talking our states.
I think it's big in every school, but I don't think it's as big as it once was in every school.
Okay.
I think other sports are becoming more prevalent. I'm talking soccer especially, and it's becoming more fragmented. But I would still say in the private school system, which, Scotch College and Melbourne Grammar and these schools that have, affluent areas, and as a result have produced lots of kids because there's scholarships that come in. It's almost like a college system. It's becoming like a college
they're
system.
finding the 12-year-olds from
That's
Wangaratta
right.
and bringing them to Scotch College.
It's exactly what they're doing. Or the Tiwi Islands or wherever else in Australia. AFL is still the main sport in the winter. That's what I would say.
So it's big.
It's big and it's tribal.
So old boys and old girls or whatever, they go back to those schools to watch them on a Saturday after play.
Yeah, absolutely. It's becoming more and more like the college system in NFL.
Yeah.
If you want to get drafted in the AFL, you are, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, it's just the way it is, you are best off getting a scholarship to one of these schools. You get your education paid for and you get the best coaches because a lot of these, they have all the money. So a lot of the former AFL players who don't want to be in an AFL system but want to coach, they go and work at a school, like a Matthew Lloyd, for example, working at Haileybury College because it pays well, it's less time, and you're still working with future guns.
Yeah, right.
So it's a big part. That is a big part of the ecosystem, not just in Melbourne, but also in Adelaide and Perth.
That is true in the rugby league and rugby union states, mainly only of rugby union.
Right.
So rugby union still has a very strong GPS and TAS sort of second tier private school competitions where they're doing the same thing. They're finding kids, and that the problem they got is a lot of those schools in their push for success. Let's take Kalen Ponga, top 3 player in the NRL at the moment, like an absolute gun.
Sorry for my ignorance. Who does he play for?
He plays for the Newcastle Knights now, plays Origin for Queensland. He's a gun, right? Like a proper gun. He was a kid who was born in New Zealand. His dad was in the mines. He went to Perth. He went to Central Queensland. He's playing rugby league in Central Queensland as a gun. Church of England, Anglican Church Grammar School in Brisbane, big rugby nursery. They all are really. Brings him down. Plays rugby union for them. They win the GPS first 15. He's got other players, Jaden Sewer, these other blokes who now play NRL, playing with him there at that school. And everyone's going, look at this kid. He's the best rugby union player they've ever found. No, he went straight back to league.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay.
So union's kind of shooting itself in the foot a little bit. But I can tell you that in the school system in Queensland and New South Wales, the biggest threat is soccer / football.
Yeah.
That's where they're taking the kids away.
And we discussed that on the first podcast as well. And that makes perfect sense.
That's the biggest threat.
One thing I'm big into the trade space in AFL.
Yeah.
I love player movement. I think it adds to the narrative and it gives the sport a rich flavour, as it does in the English Premier League when you've got the transfer window open. But it fascinates me in rugby league how players, they don't just sign a year out, they're announced a year out and everyone seems okay with it. How does that work culturally?
It is the worst thing about rugby league, and everyone, they're not okay with it. They hate it. Yeah. They accept it, and it's another one of these restraint of trade, bullshit things through the agents and through, the players. Really, what happens in rugby league is if I am so let's talk about right now. Let's just say it's 2025. So I just spoke about a guy called Kalen Ponga. Let's just say, for instance, Kalen Ponga's contract ended with the Knights at the end of 2026. Not this season, next season. He is free to negotiate. You can't talk to other clubs, but he is free to talk to other clubs on November 1 this year. So as pre-season is starting for 2026, he can negotiate and sign a contract with the team for 2027.
And how's that sit
Which
with
means
teammates?
he plays for the whole year,
Yeah.
contracted to another team. And there'll be dozens of blokes across the NRL right now who are embarking on a season for a club, and next year they're already signed.
And do
for
you all
another
know about who those
club.
players
Yeah,
are?
you know who they are.
You know who they are.
It all gets reported, and
So what about when they come up against a team that they're going to play for?
well,
Don't
people
they?
just accept that he's going to play well for my team, and even though he's going to play for them next year. It is absolutely bizarre, and it's the number one thing that rugby league has to fix.
How do you feel?
It's unacceptable to me. Unacceptable.
Do you think your
They go,
perspective
they
is
are,
shared?
The players need time and they have to move,
Nah.
and they bull. We've all been kids who share flattered or lived with a girlfriend in our 20s or whatever, and the lease is up on our place and we've got to find a new place to live, or you get a job, working in Brisbane, you get a job at the Gold Coast. What, you can't drive 100 kilometres down the highway and go flat hunting?
Yeah, of course.
Please.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me because, there's one thing. Who's top of the ladder at the moment in the NRL?
The best two teams in the NRL are Penrith and Melbourne. Penrith's won 4 in a row.
Okay, so let's say you're playing for Penrith and you've signed a deal to move next year. I can see why the fans would move on from that because you're there to win. So it's all about this year. But if you're playing for a bottom team, why would that club be playing you this week if it's about developing for the future? Like, you're not going to win anyway. Why would you be taking a spot away from someone that's got a 4-year deal at your club?
Well, a lot of times the clubs use it as an excuse to move you on early.
Yeah, right.
Like the club that signs them, they'll go, well, do you want Billy now?
And it's the same with coaches, isn't it?
Take
though?
him now.
Do coaches sign a year out as well, don't they? What
Not
about with
so
Wayne
much,
Bennett?
but they will.
Yeah.
They will. Like the assistant coaches might sign mid-year to coach another team the next year or something.
Yeah, okay.
Like that absolutely happens.
I just find it bizarre. I find it really weird. I'm glad you agree with that, actually. I just thought it was universally accepted.
No, it's absolutely bizarre. Okay, I've got my last question for you for this episode, but there's going to be plenty in future episodes. What's doing with 75 interchanges? When I'm watching AFL, I don't know who's on, who's playing where, who's off. They sprint on and off. Who counts them?
Do you want a brief history of the interchange in AFL?
Yes.
So, for a long time, the AFL was 18 v 18, and there was 1 or 2 players on the bench, and it wasn't interchange. Once you went off, that was it. You don't come back on. That was there's plenty of stories. There's a lot of stories of players who have got on for a grand final for the last 3 minutes, and that's how they played. And then in the 2000s, early 2000s, it started to change. Teams started to send their players on and off, on and off. There was 2 on the bench and 3 on the bench, finally 4 on the bench. And then Mick Malthouse, a very famous AFL coach, premiership coach at West Coast and Collingwood, went to watch ice hockey in the US or Canada. Either way, he went over there to watch ice hockey.
And they're on and off all game.
And he saw that they were on for 90 seconds at a time. He thought, imagine if we could do this. Imagine if we had a star player. It was actually designed for a player called Dane Swan, who wasn't aerobically fit, but was incredibly impactful when he was on. So he said, imagine if we could do this. So ahead of sort of 2009, 2010 season, they won the flag in 2010, Malthouse and Collingwood decided to do this. We're going to have 130 or 140 interchanges a game. You're going to play for a little bit, you're going to come off, you're going to go back on, and that's how we're going to do it. And it hurt the sport because it meant that players were too fresh and the defence won. It became too defensively minded. That in order for the game to free up, you need fatigue. It might be the same in NRL.
So NRL's exactly the same.
It's certainly the same in soccer. Towards the back end of games, it becomes a bit ragged. In footy, you need fatigue. So the AFL said, we can't have 140 interchanges a game. This, A, doesn't look good for the reasons you said, but also it doesn't look good for the way the ball's moving. You need to free the Sharon, as we talk about. You need to make sure that it can move from end to end, coast to coast. So the AFL said, we're going to put a cap on interchange. We're going to make it, I think it was 100 initially. And Kevin Sheedy's idea, the Essendon coach, was it should go down to 40. And Kevin Bartlett said the same. Make it less, more fatigue. And they settled on 75. So teams can have 75 interchanges, which doesn't include a concussion interchange. It doesn't include the changes you make at quarter time, half time, or three-quarter time. And there's a person sitting on the bench for the AFL who's counting the interchanges. And if you go over, if you get 76, there's a free kick from where the ball is, I think, plus 50 metres. And it's actually cost a couple of teams a game. So there's actually, if you sit behind the bench in the AFL, you can see each team has a counter which automatically leads up to
right.
75. So you're right. It's changed over the years. I personally think the more fatigue, the better. But then you get more injuries. So you've got to weigh up exactly what the right number is.
I loved it. Well, that's an unbelievable explanation. Well, in NRL now it's 8.
8?
Yeah.
What was it?
Well, there was unlimited at one point, and that was ridiculous. Didn't last long. Then it was 12, then it was 10, then it was 8. And it's about fatigue.
Yeah, okay.
It's about fatigue. There's been another big rule change in rugby league, which has led about to the game freeing up 2 at a lot of points, and that's the 6 again rule, where the ref doesn't have to blow a penalty.
There was a controversy a couple of years ago with that, wasn't there?
Yeah. Well,
in the grand final.
I love them.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened in rugby league. But anyway,
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah, you can.
Why are there so many scandals in the NRL? Why can't not saying the AFL is a completely clean
Well, the
skin.
AFL's had plenty.
Of course there has, but the
Plenty.
players themselves seem more naughty in the NRL than what they are in the AFL. Not saying the AFL is clean. The NRL just seems like there's scandal after scandal.
I'd go as far as to say that one of the reasons is rugby league's a lot more knockabout.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I'm not. You know, I've been watching AFL. I found it fascinating what you said about the private school system. The AFL equates a little bit with rugby for me.
It's a little bit pretentious.
Yeah, a lot of players
certain
come through that private
pockets.
school system. Rugby league, a lot of players come through the state school system. I just think it's just a bit more knockabout.
Yeah, okay.
You know, but then again, the biggest scandal we had in the season opening round in Las Vegas was 2 blokes had a blue in a lift with an inflatable baseball bat.
I would have thought Las Vegas would give us more than that.
No, they really behaved themselves. Hey, on Las Vegas,
Yes.
just to cover it off, was the AFL and were Victorians, South Australians, West Australians, were they envious of the publicity? The big, or just went, oh well, they can go and do their thing in
I think
Vegas,
it's more that. I think, as we said at the start of the podcast, AFL cares less about NRL than NRL cares about AFL, in my view. Sorry, I'm not talking about the league. I'm talking about the fans. I think the fans are going, oh, there's a bit of rugby
They're doing
league in
something
Vegas.
interesting.
Good on them.
Yeah.
But the AFL is trying to expand. Like before COVID, the Giants and the Essendon Football Club were talking about playing a game in either Los Angeles or San Francisco on stadiums that were being built for cricket for the ICC T20 World Cup.
Well, that's the problem. They've got to find the stadium.
Got to find the stadiums. But I think it's a case of let the NRL have Vegas. But there's no doubt the AFL season has been pushed forward to try to compete with that a
with
little
this
bit.
round 0.
Yeah, and Gather Round, which we call it Gather. What do you call it? Magic Round. That's Gather Round is based on Magic Round. So there's no doubt that the AFL.
You know what Magic Round's based on?
No.
It's based on Magic Round in the UK Super League,
Which is what?
which is rugby league in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So rugby league in England, it's weird, right? It's massive in the pocket of population between Manchester and Liverpool.
Yeah.
Right. There's
Right north.
Yeah, up north, but in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. In the middle, there's these tiny towns: Wigan, St Helens, Warrington, Widnes. There's all these little towns, and they all have these rugby league teams, and they play in these kind of stadiums. And so they had a Magic Round. They played at Wembley or somewhere every year.
Oh, right.
And it became a big thing.
So it's based on that.
Yeah, and then the NRL said, we're going to do that too. And then the Queensland government's quite smart. Suncorp is perfect for it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just like Adelaide's perfect for Gather Round.
Perfect for it. Although I'm a bit more of they should all be at the Adelaide Oval, man. But, you know.
Well, I mean, the thing in NRL is they're all at little stadiums, boutique club stadiums. Whereas the MCG, has how many tenants? Richmond, Melbourne, Collingwood.
That's going to be so. Just to tease future episodes, so people will know what we're going to get into. One of the big issues we're going to discuss is why were all the AFL clubs so tacit and signed on to play at Docklands and the MCG, meaning they play out of 2 stadiums basically in Melbourne, but in Sydney they have blued and would get dragged kicking and screaming to leave Manly or Cronulla to leave Shark Park. Shark Park's a hole.
Yeah, but they want to play there.
They want to play there.
Yeah.
Because the people of the Shire want to walk there on a Sunday off and then they want to walk home.
Well, they're probably more knockabout.
Yeah, way old school. So that's something we're going to get into. Another thing we're going to get into is I think the biggest story of the year in rugby league, and also it'll affect AFL, is the fact that News Corporation has sold Fox Sports and Fox Network to DAZN.
Yeah.
Ukrainian British billionaire with his sports network.
Saudi Arabian money somehow funding it.
I think it is seismic for rugby league, and that's because of News Corporation's connection to the game. News Corporations is the company that started Super League War and bought half the clubs to put it on Fox, and now they're walking away from it. Takes a lot of power away from one of the big media players in Australia, and someone else is going to buy it.
Yeah, that's significant. Yeah,
so we'll talk about that next episode. Rightio, Tom, you can get back on a plane to Melbourne.
Breeny, good to chat to you. Love it. Well done. Thank you.
Take your Sharon with you, too.
I will. I won't let you touch it.